couple of weeks ago, I think it was a Sunday, not this Sunday gone, the Sunday before at the time of this recording, I put a post out and I was talking about an experience I had with my beautiful friend, Donna Lancaster. I travelled up to Sussex for a one-day event workshop called Healing the Father Wound. And then I had the Sunday to recover, which was much needed, little would I know. And then I had a 2-day practitioner course where I got to teach what I had experienced. I just want to start by saying the entire weekend was an experience I will never, ever, ever forget. It was genuinely life-changing for me. I think I'm going to be feeling it for a very long time. There was an analogy that Donna used where she said that when a ship changes course, they make a very minor adjustment to its direction. But at first, it doesn't seem to make much difference. But over time, it completely changes the direction of where the ship ends up. And that's what it felt like for me. It was just an incredible experience. It really was. It was a remarkable experience, which I'm going to talk a bit about today. Because when I put that post out, a lot of people messaged me privately on social and friends, family members, saying they'd love to hear me talk about it. And I was like, brilliant, because I always need content. So here we are. So I'm going to talk about it today, but I want to first talk a bit about Donna. Donna Lancaster, she is one of the most remarkable humans I've ever met. She really is. I came across her work many, many years ago, and I watched this incredible documentary on YouTube, which I think is still available. I'll put that link in the show notes, called Loved, where she and her business partner, whose name escapes me at this moment, used to put on retreats called The Bridge. And it was for people to come along and work with their grief. And these retreats would be transformative, much like what I experienced. And what Donna did eventually was she wrote this book, The Bridge. And in this book is a process that she walks you through to help you work with grief and all of the emotions and the meanings that you had attached to all of that grief experience. Anyway, I ended up speaking to Donna on episode 27 of the Self-Development Podcast. Now, for those that are new to the show, this is obviously the Johnny Lawrence podcast, but if you scroll down the feed, you'll see that there are a good, I think it's almost 90 episodes of podcasts before you get to the Johnny Lawrence podcast. And that's the Self-Development Podcast, which is a podcast I used to do before this. And on episode 27 of that, I speak to Donna. And that is the first time we meet ever. And since then, we have just had the most incredible relationship. She's like the family member that I get to choose for myself. Donna is really, really amazing. And she's had a really big impact on my relationship with myself and the meaning I've put behind what happened to me as a child, which has obviously had a fairly devastating impact on my life in general. So today, I'm going to talk about the experience. I'm going to be careful because there are other people on the course and that, so I'm not going to be talking about them and I'm not going to be referencing them or anything like that. So for anyone that was on the course that's listening, don't be afraid of that. I'm not going to be doing that. I'm just going to be talking about my experience. And it was a deeply personal thing to me, but I have this relationship with you, the listeners, and people that follow me on social. And I'm cool with that because I think it's super important because it's something that sits beneath our behaviors, our triggers, our insecurities, and our relationships. And that parent wound, whether it be the mother wound or the father wound, it's our sort of default setting. It's our programming. Like I say, I've just spent this weekend with Donna doing the workshop and the facilitator training, and it's been on healing these wounds. And I'll be honest, it shook me in ways that I didn't think it could. And I don't mean that negatively. It shook me in a way in which only the truth can shake you, if I'm honest. What I never really did was, yes, I'd intellectualized what had happened to me. I'd even come to a level of acceptance. What I didn't do was I didn't look at my childhood and the way I felt about it as requiring me to grieve. I never grieved the loss of a childhood. I never grieved the absence of a father. I never grieved that feeling of being a lost little boy in the world, not knowing what to do, feeling scared all the time. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about what I learned, how these wounds have shown up in my life, how they shaped the man I became, and how healing them is reshaping the man I'm choosing to become now. There might be some of you going, Johnny, what are you on about? I didn't ask you to talk about this, but I'm listening to your podcast and I don't know what the father wound is. I don't know what the parent wound is. The parent wound, I think in some regards, it's better to talk about what it isn't. And certainly what it isn't is it's not about blaming our parents, because that's just going to keep us where we probably don't want to be, because it's not about holding resentment or pointing a finger. It's about acknowledging the imprint left on us emotionally, psychologically, behaviorally by the two individual people. And that's important because it's very easy for us to say, oh, our parents screwed us up or our parents didn't do this or didn't do that. But actually, they both played individual roles. Both of them. And it's important to acknowledge those as being different because they shaped the very foundations of our sense of safety, our sense of love, our sense of worth, and our sense of belonging. The parent wound is created when a child doesn't receive something they needed. I think this work is best expressed by David Richo, who Donna is a great fan of and has since made me a fan of in his books. And he has this thing called the 5 A's, which are core principles for healthy, mindful relationships. And the 5 A's are attention, acceptance, appreciation, affection, and allowing. So how much attention that we're given, I realized this weekend, and it did make me sad, that I have never spent any one-to-one time with my father. Not even a trip to B&Q, or it's a DIY shop for people that don't live in the UK. Nothing. He never took me anywhere. He never spent any time with me at all. He never gave me his attention. Ever. Like literally ever. I'm not just saying that. I mean never. Never have I spent any time one-to-one with him in my entire life. Acceptance. He was always trying to change me. I was always wrong, no matter what I did. Even if I did the things he asked me to do, I didn't do them right. He was never very accepting of who I was or of anything I did, ever. Appreciation. Never appreciated me at all. At all. Never showed me any affection, not a hug, a handshake. To be honest, he barely looked at me unless he was hurting me and allowing me. He was never curious about who I was. He never allowed me to be myself. Therefore, I grew up with this big open hole of like, who am I? I don't know who I am because I was never allowed to be myself. I was never allowed to explore and be curious and make mistakes and be myself. I was just never allowed to do that. I felt like I had to be a version of him, even though he didn't seemingly like himself, which is interesting. So if those things didn't happen, it can create a parent wound, a father wound, a mother wound. And sometimes the wounds can come from what did happen. So in my case, violence, chaos, and then in other terms, addiction, emotional absence, criticism, and constant unpredictability. So as you can see, there are many, many ways that a parent wound can happen. In my case, it was about survival. That's what it was about for me. I survived my childhood. It was a fight. Me, the fear, and the constant adjustment of hypervigilance where I had to watch my surroundings all the time in case anything happened that was going to cause violence later, because the violence was often unspeakable, and that was something that I came to understand later in life as I started to go over some of the things that have happened. Growing up in an environment where violence and instability were normal taught me that the world was unsafe, that love was conditional, and that trusting others was a risk. And here's the thing most people will never realize. You may grow up, become an adult, but the child inside you doesn't. And I know that might land weird for some people. They're like, what's he talking about? Child inside me. I would encourage you in this moment to try and find a way to accept that concept, that we never really turn from a child into an adult. Not really. We're 17 years old and X amount of days, and then all of a sudden, overnight, we become 18 and then we're considered an adult in the UK. But nothing changes. We're still that child. We've still got all of the same belief systems, all of the same values, all of the same behavioral traits, responses, reactions, whatever. We're still that same person. We're just told we're an adult. And it's that concept, in a sense, that separates us from seeing that inner child within us. And I suppose there are people out there that will roll their eyes and go, oh, and I was probably one of those people, to be honest, completely honest with you. You see, that child keeps trying to fix, rewrite, or avoid the original wound through relationships, achievement, addiction, in my case, avoidance, perfectionism, my relationship with perfectionism, people-pleasing, or self-punishment. If I'm honest with you, I tried them all, and that didn't get me where I wanted to be at all, because the parent wound shaped my life really in these ways. I learned to survive, not receive. When you grow up unsafe, you become hyper-independent, or you can become hyper-independent. I have to watch that because I'm going to be merging my experiences and offering information about you, and some of what's true for me might not be true for you. So when you grow up unsafe, you don't ask for help, you don't trust anyone to stay, you don't let people in, and the world praises you for it. It does. You're told you're strong, you're resilient, you're driven, but deep down, it's not strength. It's fear. Fear of needing anyone, fear of being let down again. That was the case for me. Also, I became addicted to escape. I've spoken openly about my challenges with addiction in the past. Recently, 5 years sober, I'm happy to say. But it's not just substances. But there was an emotional addiction to not feeling emotions, to escaping reality, numbing, running, distracting. All of that, the child in me saying, this is too heavy. I don't want to feel this. I had an unwillingness or an inability to experience my emotions, and it was difficult for me. And that's why I used alcohol. Alcohol was just the solution. It wasn't the problem. I just didn't want to experience my emotions. It was too much for me. So I became addicted to escaping. I chased external validation. If you didn't get unconditional love as a child, you grew up chasing it in applause, achievement, relationships, or work in general. I built a life on performing, being good enough, impressive enough, helpful enough, successful enough. The list goes on. But no amount of validation heals a wound created by the absence of validation in childhood. I struggled with closeness, not because I didn't want connection, but because connection comes with risk of disappointment, risk of conflict, risk of being truly seen. And the wounded child in me had learned that being seen wasn't always safe. I recognized this struggle with closeness one time when I was sat with my wife and 2 sons, and we were about to watch Moana, the Disney film. And my son, my youngest, he snuggled into me for a cuddle. And I just felt this, I don't know how to describe it, just this uncomfortableness. It was really, really difficult for me. And I was just like, what is going on? And I was riddled with judgment and self-loathing and frustration because I just couldn't just have this cuddle and watch Moana like everybody else seemingly could. And I was just like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And then lastly, I repeated patterns. This part was really uncomfortable, but it's the truth. I recreated the emotional dynamics I grew up with. Harsh internal criticism, unhealthy boundaries, self-sabotage, all because familiarity felt like safety, even when it hurt me. Because here's the thing, we'll repeat the patterns until we repair the wound. And that brings me to the weekend that I had with Donna. Donna and I, like I said, have been friends for a really long time. And lots of things have been coming up for me. The podcast is doing really well. Social media is doing really well. I'm speaking a lot more publicly, and I'm really getting close now to putting this book out that I've been talking about for a long, long time. And all of these insecurities and these feelings and emotions and self-doubt, which I hadn't experienced in a really long time, were coming up. And I've got this belief that life is like a computer game, that we have to beat the final boss at the end of each level to get to the next level. And I think my final boss was this for me to get to the next level. And then the problems of the next level will start. You're like, what's the point in this, Johnny? I don't want to do this. But the weekend with Donna was, as I say, transformational. What Donna's work allowed me to do was something I hadn't done enough of. And that was make space for the child inside me rather than the man who had survived. The workshop wasn't about logic or analysis or adult reasoning of any kind. It was about emotion, embodiment, honesty, and grief. A few things hit me hard. The child in me never got to say what he felt. The fear, the confusion, the anger, the sadness, all of it was swallowed, and we carry what we don't express. There's this incredible part, and if you read the book, The Bridge, you'll hear about it in there, where you write a letter to your father, or in my case, I wrote a letter to my father, saying all of the things that I've always wanted to say. And at first, when I sat with this empty piece of paper, I wasn't sure what I was going to write. But boy, when I started writing, I became honest. Things that I'd forgotten about started coming out. And this letter just went on and on and on. And over the weekend, I got to read that letter and to have it witnessed. And I don't know if I've ever had an emotional release like that. It really took me by surprise. I have a difficult relationship with tears. My dad used to hurt me till I cried, and then he used to keep hurting me till I stopped crying. So tears was always a really challenging thing for me, but yeah, not when I read that letter. For the first time, that little boy got a voice. And he said everything he wanted to say. And it tore me open, but in a necessary way, because now I get to put it back together the way I want it to be, the way I need it to be. Second thing, I've been trying to become the man I needed without acknowledging the boy who needed him. I've been building myself, healing myself, pushing myself, but I hadn't truly gone back to that original wound with the one thing that was needed, genuine and true compassion. I thought I had, but I, just like I say on this podcast, I created a version of what I was able to tolerate and kind of what I thought I would be okay with. But I never went back to the cold, hard truth. And the cold, hard truth in my case was so much more savage and so much more brutal than I wanted it to be. And that's what I've been working with. But this weekend, I worked with what was true, really true. A truth that I didn't even know was true until I sat there and I allowed that little boy the time to write down how he felt and what he needed to say. And lastly, that boy deserved safety, love, protection, not survival. That little boy, like every little boy, deserves that safety, deserves that love, deserves that protection. And there was a moment where my whole experience as a father, son, changed. And it was the moment that I held my firstborn son for the first time, and I had this amazing feeling. My whole life I've been asking myself, why did my dad do the things he did? Why did he do it? Why? And in that moment when I was handed my son, I started asking myself, how? How the hell? How? It was like a complete malfunction. I couldn't understand. All I was feeling was this love, this protection, this, I want to give you everything. Surely he felt that. So how could he do the things that he did? It just didn't make sense to me. So that boy deserved safety, love, protection, and hearing that, saying that, and recognizing that in myself was so, so powerful. This weekend, it wasn't therapy. It was truth. It was connection. It was healing in community. It allowed me to see my story not as something to rise above, but something to integrate, honor, and hold. And I don't know whether anybody that I spent the weekend with will listen to this, but I want to say that you were a huge part of the weekend too. I will never, ever forget you. You were there for me in ways that I'm not sure anyone's ever been there for me, and I hope I was able to offer the same. I definitely tried. But we all had our different experiences, I know that. So how does this wound still show up today? Even now, after years of sobriety, inner work, coaching and self-leadership, the parent wound shows up. It's just what it is, right? So it shows up when I push myself too hard, when I overcommit, when I avoid conflict, when I get defensive, when I feel the urge to be perfect, when I shut down emotionally, when someone gets too close, when something good happens. I wait for it to all fall apart. Recognize any of those? These are not adult behaviors. They're childhood survival strategies still running the show. And naming them almost removes their power. Because why does healing the parent wound matter? Well, for me, here's the most important part. Healing the parent wound isn't about fixing the past. It's about freeing the future. Healing this wound, it can change your relationships. You stop choosing from wounds and start choosing from worth. It can change the way you speak to yourself. Inner criticism becomes inner parenting. You become kinder, calmer, and less reactive, or at least you can with practice. It can change your capacity to love and be loved, and that was so important to me, allowing myself to be loved. There are people in my past who I just wish I could reach out to and say, I'm sorry, I just wasn't ready to let you love me, man. Just wasn't. Because you stop expecting others to fill a childhood void. And that's what I was doing. I was like, if you can't make this go away, then nah. You don't know we're doing that. And that's where the compassion is useful. It can quiet the self-sabotage. No more subconscious punishment. No more fear of happiness. No more running from intimacy or success. It transforms your legacy. And that's becoming more and more important to me. I had my 45th birthday this year, and my legacy is becoming important. For a long time, I've been like, what do I want my life to be? Now I'm starting to really think about what I want to leave behind. What I want people to say when I'm not here. When I'm gone, there'll be endless podcasts to listen to, books to read, experiences that people would have experienced with me that hopefully has helped. Because to transform your legacy, you stop passing on what you didn't heal. Whether as a parent, leader, partner, or friend, your patterns stop with you. Healing that parent wound is the most courageous work a person can do. It requires grief. It requires truth. It requires forgiveness, whether that's of someone else or yourself. It requires compassion and a willingness to finally see yourself fully. Heavy one today. Hopefully it's been okay, but I just really needed somewhere to put this because I'll probably listen to this podcast to remind myself how I felt when I finally went there over the weekend. I wasn't sure if I was able to do a podcast this week because of the way I've been feeling. I felt emotionally drained, but talking about this just felt like the right thing to do. And like I say, quite a few of you asked me to do it because the truth is we all carry a parent wound of some kind. Some big, some subtle, some obvious, some quiet. When I did this thing, in the beginning, we were all as a group and we all discussed the role of a father or a mother. And we had to acknowledge that it was a lot. It's a lot to ask of a human being to be the perfect parent, to give you everything you need. And the list was substantial from all of the people in the room. We all offered what we thought a parent was. And by the time this list had appeared on the wall, it was obscenely big. It was a lot to ask of any human being. And we had to acknowledge that. And even if you are the perfect parent, ultimately what you run the risk of doing is creating a perfection emotion in a partner that a person will never ever find. It's a criteria that's too high for any partner in life to ever uphold. So then you have relationship challenges, or it just becomes so much pressure to be the perfect parent that you crumble under that pressure. So even if you're perfect or not so perfect or whatever goes on, I don't think there's a way of parenting where you don't cause some level of problems for your child in the future. What's important is there was a statement at the end, and I absolutely loved it. And it was this: I found my healing when I could finally see my mum and dad as the man and the woman before they had me. Then I realized that there was nothing to forgive. Before they were mum, before they were dad, they were a person who had dreams and hopes and ambitions and things they wanted to do. They were just like us. And then they became a parent, and everything that had happened to them before, all of the things that we don't know about them, they played out in their parenting. And yeah, we're allowed to be angry. We're allowed to be resentful. We're allowed to wish that things were different. But really, we have to let go of that anger and rage at some point in order to be compassionate to ourselves and perhaps even to them. You see, healing is possible and it's powerful. And this weekend reminded me that I am not the boy who had to survive anymore. I'm the man who gets to choose. And so can you be. If your parent wound is still shaping your life, I hope this episode is an invitation not to blame, but to heal. Not to rewrite the past, but to reclaim your future. As I said, I did a practitioner course on how to deliver this, and right now it's just all sinking in. But my hope is that at some point next year, I might be able to put this into action. And you guys will be the first to know, because this is powerful work and I can see why Donna wants to pass it on. I just want to say a massive thank you to Donna Lancaster. I love you, my friend. I really do. And thank you for everything that you've done for me. I'll never forget it. I mean that. Thank you for listening today. Take care of yourself and take care of the child inside you too. Thank you for listening to the John and Lawrence podcast, and I'll see you again next week for another episode.